Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. I have a way of looking at financial freedom that's helped me out a lot, and I'm hoping that this could be a game changer for you too. When most of us think of financial freedom, we picture all of our living expenses being paid without us having to sell our life 1 hour at a time. But instead of looking at financial freedom as the goal, I've broken it up into a system that's made it a lot simpler for me to reach each step, because financial freedom for me came in stages. I like to look at it like this: an asset for every expense. One of the first things I had to do was figure out what my cost of living expenses were. Housing, food, transportation, healthcare, entertainment, cell phone, internet, the things that I wanted to live a comfortable life. But if you'll notice, in my cost of living expenses, I did not talk about saving for retirement, or saving at all. Just how much does it cost for me to live comfortably? Acquiring assets that pay our cost of living expenses is how we're going to reach financial freedom. Assets that we acquire after that make it a lot easier for us to help other people, or leave generational wealth to our kids, or to your favorite charity. For each of us, our freedom numbers might be a bit different. Here's the order that I did it in. And in the beginning, I wasn't making a lot of money and I had a lot of debt, so my debt to income didn't look good. Most of us understand that we have a credit score that lenders use as one of the factors to determine if we're a good investment or not, if we want to borrow money to buy an asset. A lot of us don't understand the debt to income ratio. And if you're not making a lot of money and you have a lot of debt, sometimes getting any kind of loan is going to be a problem. I was able to find a solution to my debt to income problem that did a few things. I moved from my house into an apartment and rented my house out. This, in the beginning, let me figure out if I could be a single parent raising 3 kids, working full-time, and handle the responsibilities of managing a property. Then, in a couple of years, I was able to show rental income on my tax returns. That rental income allowed lenders to use rental income to offset my debt-to-income ratio. Originally, my plan was to find a single-family house, purchase it with an owner-occupied low down payment loan and get 30-year fixed-rate, low-interest rate loans, and live there for a year or however long it took me to save up the next down payment, and then rinse and repeat the process, moving from one house to the next, increasing the number of rentals that I have. The problem is, in my market, which is between Tacoma and Olympia in Washington State, single-family houses don't cash flow. They cost too much to generate any profit even after I've moved out and rented the house out. Luckily, around this time, I was educating myself on the BiggerPockets blogs. They didn't even have a YouTube channel yet. And I found out that owner-occupied loans work for single-family house, duplex, triplex, or fourplex. 4 units or less, you get the same loan options, pretty much. I mean, there might be a slight increase to the interest rate. I found out that I could buy a duplex, moved into one side of this duplex, and rented out the other. My debt-to-income ratio was no longer a problem because I was showing profit from the house that I had rented out for 2 years on my tax returns, and the lender was willing to recognize the rental income from the other side of the duplex in my debt-to-income ratio as long as there was at least 3 months remaining on the lease, which seemed really odd to me, that a lender was letting me make a 30-year commitment because I had a 3-month commitment from a tenant. Since then, I've learned that lenders do this because most times your mortgage is going to be sold. In 4 of my deals, my mortgage was sold before the first payment was due. I wouldn't worry about your mortgage being sold. For me, this has changed nothing with my loan structures except making sure I'm paying the right person. When I moved from the apartment into the duplex, my housing expenses went from $1,500 a month down to $300, and I had cash flow from the single-family house that I was renting out. My first 2 assets covered my housing expenses. House hacking is a powerful strategy, but it's not required. I purchased the place I was house hacking, and I was getting cash flow from the single-family house. If I wasn't house hacking, and my cost of living expenses for housing every month was $1,500, all I would need to do is acquire assets that produced $1,500 a month in cash flow for my housing costs to be covered. Kind of simple. Don't overthink it. An asset for every expense. Each new asset that I acquired added to my cash flow, which let me save more and more of my W-2 income. My goal was to have at least a minimum of 100% savings from my W-2 income. Because unless you have the ability to save 100% of your W-2 income, you are not financially free. You are still relying on selling your life 1 hour at a time. I made this video that talks about how to get over a 100% savings rate, because until we do that, we are still reliant on a job. And a lot of us are trapped in jobs that we don't like. So once I passed a 100% savings rate, I learned that for a fact, I have my job because I love what I do and not because I'm doing it because I need the money. A lot of people are hoping that they don't get fired, hoping they don't get laid off, hoping their company doesn't get shut down, hoping that a pandemic doesn't happen and they can't go to work. You don't want to get caught living on hopium. This is a good reason why most people should be trying to figure out a way to reach financial freedom. For me, after housing comes food, and I think this one might confuse a few people. I raised 3 picky kids. I don't ever want to cook again in my life. So I eat out all the time, unless I have leftovers that I can just warm up. So I spend at least $1,000 a month on food. Some people can get this number down significantly and they might think that that's a lot of money to spend on food. But if an asset's paying for it, do what you enjoy. But for me, it's much more important to eat out and relax and enjoy life. And if you took out Lowe's and Home Depot, I have not been inside a store in years, close to a decade. Did you know that there are people in stores? And someday, I might make a video that explains why I avoid people. But not today. For me, Amazon has been a lifesaver. I don't have to store ingredients. I don't have to cook. I don't have to clean up afterwards. All of that is time that I can spend doing things that I enjoy. And I completely understand that there are people who enjoy cooking. We are not the same. I drive paid-off cars. I don't like having a car payment, but I factor $700 a month for transportation because I know eventually the vehicle I'm driving is not going to be worth repairing. And saving that $700 a month means that when it's time to get the next vehicle, I'll be able to do it in cash, avoiding loan origination fees, any possible interest, and I'm pretty sure the next vehicle I'm going to get is going to be one of these Tesla trucks.
It didn't go through, so that's a plus side. Let's try that, right? Try that one, really? Okay. Sure. Oh, man, it didn't go through.
Unless something weirder looking comes out sooner. I also factor $500 a month for streaming services, and this might seem like a lot to some people, especially when you think, I don't have cable. But I pay for streaming services that don't have commercials, and I think that's been the strongest thing I've done to help avoid life creep. Instead of looking at a massive goal like I want financial freedom, which for many of us is going to take up to 10 years and several assets, let's try looking at what it would take to cover expenses. For housing, are you going to house hack or buy some assets that pay for housing? Food, transportation, healthcare. A lot of times when it comes to investing, healthcare seems to be the barrier for a lot of people. Our employers pay $600 to $1,000 a month for our healthcare, and we cover $50 to $200 a month out of our paychecks. So people think if I'm not working, I won't have an employer paying the bigger part of my healthcare, and you're right. Healthcare for most people in the United States is going to take somewhere between $600 and $1,000 per person. Outside the United States, it's like $60 a couple, so much better deal. But that just means that to cover your healthcare, you need assets that produce $1,000 a month per person. And try not to overthink it. Let's say you want to take a 1-month vacation and go all over Europe and it's going to cost you $12,000, but you want to do this every year. That just means, again, to cover this expense, you need assets that produce $1,000 a month to make the $12,000 a year to cover a really nice vacation. I like to do about a month in Thailand or Colombia every year, and hopefully we'll get back to normal here soon and I can do that again. But with the strength of the dollar in those countries, I usually find that when I come back, I have more money than when I left, even though I did everything. Here in Thailand, I swam with elephants, played with tigers, scuba dove with whale sharks, and ate the best foods. Financial freedom is not about being frugal. It's about having assets pay for your expenses and not having to sell your life 1 hour at a time. If you want to spend more, get more assets. Yes, it starts slow, and it takes a few years for the income snowball to kick in to where you can start acquiring the assets faster. In the comments below, let me know what the next asset that you're working to acquire is. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.